In this video, let's take a look at this Coyote sculpt here by Gabby. The question was, how do we handle like eyes on a canine specifically, or just the entire head region? And as I'm looking at this model, I think this is a, pretty solid start here. To take it further, I do think we need to push the head further away from that kind of short-haired, friendly dog. I can't really think of the breed at the moment that I'm thinking of, but I was never very good at animals anyway. But so as I'm looking at some of the reference images here, I think we're missing a little bit of the vertical mass in the head. Part of what you might find difficult on this is the general lack of mass in certain areas is going to make it harder to identify this as, like, say, a coyote versus one of those other dog breeds. And as I fill in some of this stuff here, at this stage, since a lot of the anatomy has been kind of worked out, it's probably best to introduce some of these large fur shapes here. We can just be very very big with our strokes and our masses here. I know it's a little bit more of an optical illusion, but especially when you look at some references here, like these shapes here, I think for the most part they are going to be like a fur color differentiation, but I do think it might help to, I think there is a little bit of mass if you look at some of the taxidermy stuff here. So that's going to be our first indication here, is just a little bit of, why is this not working? Oh, there it is. Just a little bit more, something to work with. Really, I think if you want to look at certain, as far as like the eyes in particular, I think what's throwing you off is that your eyes are actually very outwards facing, whereas if you look at some of these here, they are a little bit more forward facing than you would imagine, right? So let's take it. So this is an actual taxidermy, and there's some very bizarre looking things here, but so if you compare some of this here, where it's like you see it's almost dead on, and that's going to influence how I rearrange things. And I'll take a look at your skull that you did in a second here, and basically I want to compare the front view, and then I'm going to compare the side view. So if you take a side view, just like on a human, you're going to, well, not exactly like a human, because I think there's slightly more to the side than we are, but so you're not going to see as much of this here. Let's like, we need to start defining the extremities of the lids better, right? So oh, I see. Okay, so this is all the same thing, which is okay. It's all time to mesh together. Actually, something weird. What's going on here? Okay, let's polygroup a bunch of this stuff together. I want to figure out what's going on. Okay, so the eyes are separate. And if the eyes are separate, then what I'm going to do then is Okay, you have a bunch of things polygrouped. Maybe I'll keep the legs. That's cool. So if I do this, so if I Control Shift click on the head area here, because I don't want to lose the rest of your polygroups, I might find it useful later when I'm adjusting the pose. The Control Shift is clicking this entire thing, and then I'll do a auto groups, and that'll put the eyes separate from the head, and I still have everything else. So if I see here, Control Shift click on that, yeah. So and then I'll hide this. Control Shift click on that. I'll hide that. I will Control click outside. I'll mask everything out. Control Shift click outside, and then invert this, and then we'll hit Control W, and I'll do it one more time. Just want to make the colors a little bit different here. Okay, so now, just to make my life easier, let's hide this, and then I'm going to go up to Subtool, and I will split. Well, okay, split it in here. Okay, it didn't let me do that because I wasn't on the low subdivision level. And I'll go back here and let's solo this, and I'll just kind of smooth this out so we get your eyeball shape back. And there we go. And now I can more accurately mess with the head, and I'm not going to worry too much about what's happening with the eyeball. Yeah, so I think we need to go more forward facing, and that's going to be bringing in this inside corner here, which will help straighten out this snout. And that snout, or let's take a look here. I feel like that snout's going to come to a pretty close point anyway, so that will just help. Some compositional stuff too, just pointing the nose, pointing the attention, tapering that form. And I think that's going to just give this model or this sculpt a little bit more appeal if we do stuff like that. Right, so I can again kind of go in, and it's almost like treating some of the human forms in the eyebrow area here. Like this. I know they have really big ears, but I think the fact that they flare out on yours at the tip is a little bit strange, so I'm going to pinch this entire thing. And then I'll move this around. So I'm looking at the general profile of everything and trying to figure out, there's something a little bit odd here. I don't like that cavity. I don't like some of these forms here, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of simplify a lot of these shapes. Maybe even this snout is actually too long. It's too long, and I think it could go a little bit lower, and then we could probably, if we wanted to, just at the reference I'm looking at, we can probably just resolve a lot of these issues with the move brush here, trying to create some more. It's actually quite hard to do a decent job sculpting while talking. I'm not sure how other teachers do their demos, but especially since I'm not as familiar with animals as I am with humans, this does not make that any easier. So I'm just going to go in and kind of fill out some of this stuff. Looking for, there's also, if you look at some of these front views, I think there's this kind of, what is it? A dumpling? Kind of like a dumpling shape here. Or a meat bun, like a, yeah, like Chinese meat bun. Here, and then we're getting a much more trapezoidal kind of baki form. So I think I'm going to take this in, and I'm going to try and push that general shape design here. And again, this kind of look at this. It's a pretty good front view here. Look at the tapering. I mean, there's it's a little misleading because of coloring, but it's like there's like a front like a top plane, then that side plane is like at an angle, and then I can kind of create the same kind of effect, just like using trim dynamic. I can kind of point this back here. The way I shaped this eye is looking kind of strange. It's looking kind of like an angry human eye thing, and that's not exactly the look I want. So I'm going to go back in here. I'm going to clarify some of the shapes that you had already put in. Yeah, so nothing I'm doing is terribly, or is like really changing a whole lot of what you've already done. I might just subdivide this one more time, just so I can get a little bit more resolution here. And we'll mess around with some of this stuff here, making sure that I get, okay, this is getting crazy. See, I'm going to try and just force the issue, and maybe I'll just like contour things around that shape, because I don't really feel like going through the process of z-meshing everything again. But if you run into a lot of issues with that, you might just have to do that. It's just, right now I just want to focus on sculpting. If I need to do that at some point in a little bit, I'll just go ahead and do that. But the more I kind of work out in the sculpt, the more, or the less I think I have to deal with that. You know, just trying to be mindful of like the wobbliness, right? We kind of want these to be cylindrical forms that read as cylindrical forms. Yeah, so getting that dumpling shape back. The height of the ear too is looking pretty massive. So if I look again here, it doesn't even match the eye line. So right here, we're well below the eye line. So if I just pull this up, and maybe if we adjust some of these transition points into the head, that'll help with that massive fur. I feel like I keep pushing this towards more of a fox, and I think the only way I can break out of that is to just keep adding more fur mass. It's that sleekness, that sleek profile of the head that you had that's really making this look like more of like a fox than it is like a larger canine. And this kind of readjusts some of these marks here. I don't know why I said marks. That's not the right word to say. But it's late at night. It could just be maybe we just need more of that mass. I can play with the idea of having kind of like a part in the middle, just looking at some reference here. And hopefully you're noticing as I'm sculpting, or how I'm sculpting and how I'm putting down the marks, even with this like very high focus shift or positive focus shift, I still feel like I'm getting the impression that there's fur and fur direction here. Addressing some of the blockiness here. I think if we go, we really need to take the, I feel like canines or quadrupeds don't really have a pitted neck as it is so called, but if we look at just how these muscles come down, they do converge, just kind of like on a human, but just without the clavicle. And then the sternal symmetry here. We need to get the pectoralis to work. So this is going to bunch up around here. We're also going to kind of move, make sure that the pectoralis is interacting with all that stuff. Okay, I don't want to get too carried away with like body stuff, just because I know the focus of this was the head. But let's kind of taper things in, and then yeah, I think honestly, since they're just so furry. I mean, the fur isn't short, so I would start layering the fur in at this point here. And if I take a look, let's take a look at this side view for the head. I'm going to compare it. Okay, so I think here's some of the stuff that I'm noticing as I look through a lot of these different heads. Part of it is me messing things up that you've sculpted, and I've exaggerated this transition, where I think this is actually more of a smooth S curve. Smooth S curve, and then the brow, the ridge brow, like the rigid brow protrudes from that, and then we go up higher, and then that's where we get the ear. So basically, I think what that's going to have to happen here is I need to decrease that slope. I need to reposition these ears since your Coyote's in motion, maybe having it back like that is better, and it's probably gonna look cooler. But instead, I'm going to shift this forward to kind of push this closer to what I'm seeing in the reference here. And then we need to address this kind of shape. So this is very fox-like, I think, without me looking up foxes, but it's okay. Okay, so now I've worked out visually what some of that stuff is, as far as what I need to change. I'm gonna go ahead and adjust this. So the nose, we'll push that forward a little bit. This is going to move forward like that. I'm going to kind of adjust your lips. I'm going to take this subdivision down a little. It's going to be easier for me to make these big changes with less divisions here. Right, so you can kind of see there's this kind of action, kind of lip action in the reference here, like right here. I'm going to interpret that furry mask, this shadow, as like that point of articulation in the jaw. I could be entirely wrong. I could be completely misinterpreting that, but it's kind of something that makes logical sense to me, and so I'm going to use it like that, and we'll figure out if I'm wrong later. So hopefully this change to the head is making sense. So I'll smooth this out. I'm going to look at some of how the hair grows here, and I'll use that to help guide my brush strokes as I deposit this into the model. So kind of take this here, I actually kind of like how this kind of overlaps downwards. I think that's kind of an interesting shape. Totally breaking the geometry at this point, but it's okay. If that becomes an issue, again, we'll have to duplicate it, Z-remesh it, and fix it that way. But I think we can kind of make do without that. And then let's that vertical mass to the head. And then we can keep moving this around. I'm going to kind of readjust to looking at some of the forms I created this way, but then I actually like how we're getting a kind of a completely different language now that I'm looking at some other references from different views here. So essentially, instead of going straight down like that, take this and I'll loop it up a little higher. And then I think this can go higher as well. I'm not too happy with how some of this stuff is turning out. Okay, so the head's getting busted. Really, they're probably... Alright, let's just fix this. I'm going to detach your head from this body. Just make a duplicate. I'll hide this, and then I'm going to mask this. And then we can do everything else later as far as fixing it. But I just don't want to work asymmetrically right now. I think especially since you're so close to having a symmetrical model in the head, then we might as well just keep it symmetrical. And let's take this down, and I'm going to hit split masked, go back up, go back up. Okay, so mirror and weld. We've done this a few times during class. Mirror and weld only works negative to positive. So if I do this, okay, I'm going to duplicate this again. Make sure I have a... Before I ever delete subdivision levels, I'm always going to make sure I have a copy of it. Just because I'm going to screw something up at some point. So I have a copy here. Let's go ahead and delete lower. Alright, so if I do mirror and weld, it's going to take this busted version and flip it over there. Right, just like that. Okay, so again, if we turn on the floor, it's going to go negative x to positive x. So if I undo that, instead, let's go down to deformation. I'm going to go to mirror x here. So I put the right side on the left, on the negative x. Now I go back over to geometry, mirror and weld, and there we go. Alright, so now our symmetry should be working fine. I think maybe what I'm going to do is I'm going to downplay that lower eyelid piece, and then I'll kind of move this around. So I think right now our eyelids are looking kind of ambiguous. And since I already detached the head and now I have no subdivision levels, I might as well just dynamesh this to fix all of the stuff in the middle here. So let's go ahead and dynamesh this. I can go higher, maybe 420. And then let's kind of do that. We'll get rid of that. There we go. So now all of this stuff will work together a little bit better. And now I need to figure out where is everything. Where are all these forms coming from? I'm going to try and also be clear about like a tear duct, where's everything going, etc. And maybe also what I need to do, let's go ahead and let's take a look at this. Okay, so these eyes are kind of busted from what I did. So I'm going to add new eyes. Let's go back into geometry or subtool, append sphere. Grab the sphere. And let's move this here. Just give it a nice clean start. So I think part of the problem is that your eyes might be just a tiny bit small. Where is my manipulator? There we go. Let's just move this down for now. And I'll move this here, move this forward. Something like that. And then we'll go to Subtool Master, and then we'll mirror this here. Things are still looking kind of weird. What's going on? I think it's this line that I drew should probably come less of an angle. The eye can go bigger. And again, if I look at, okay, eyes are, okay, there's always like an inside corner to things, kind of like wolf, but the eyes are too wide-sided, I think, so I need to bring in basically the entire thing. And then I can move this in. Okay, maybe we just went too big. So now I need to kind of, I wonder if I can just pinch everything. Let's kind of take the pinch brush and squeeze the eyes. Squeeze and move things. I'm trying to readjust some of this stuff. I think part of what's making things look weird is like I just took this form and made it way too big. And let's add some like fluff. So I hope the way I'm putting this down, again, like is making sense. I'm kind of just trying to slowly build up some of these furry forms that I'm seeing in like the ear, and then we can go ahead and you should be able to just take a look at how I'm doing this and kind of apply it to the rest of the model here. take a look at everything else. Put the body back on. Yeah, I think the ears were just kind of getting a little bit too out of control, looking kind of like a bat or something. I'm just gonna kind of pull out some forms with the move brush here. You can also like move elastic to get some of this. Yeah, it's kind of hard to judge since a lot of reference images are all like just different. So, but I mean, I guess the short of it is, without making this video too long, is you got a lot of the forms in. So now it's time to kind of put some of those features that are a little bit more like classically Coyote, which is going to be that fur effects, the massive fur in certain areas. Even those are kind of a pain to do fur, obviously, but I think if you just kind of approach it as like these big forms that move around what am I doing? That was terrible. If you just treat it as kind of shapes and directions, right? That should help make this a lot easier. Yeah, and then really kind of bringing some of that neck fur down, just like this, just like that. Okay, so don't want to give up on this quite yet because I think there are some things that I can address fairly easily here. Just looking again, getting a fresh eye, looking at different reference images here. So again, let's try and get that tear duct. I'm going to subdivide this. Yeah, so if you're wondering why I subdivided this is instead of Z-remeshing it, is that, I mean, first of all, those are two, I guess vocabulary words, but that doesn't mean that there's anything unique really about them, because geometry is geometry. You can subdivide geometry no matter what it is. It just won't have like good results necessarily. So sometimes I think it's just easier if you're kind of in the flow of something to just subdivide like a Dynamesh model, and then we can slow down and work out all the technical stuff, like when do I actually need to Z-remesh and project, that kind of thing. And it's never too late. As you notice, I split the head off of this model. I split the head off. I ended up Dynameshing this anyway, even though I was trying to avoid it. Now I'm subdividing that, and then once I've resolved a lot of the issues, then I'll go ahead and duplicate this, Z-remesh it, subdivide it, and then project it. It's pretty much never too late. You're never locked into anything in ZBrush. always going to be a workaround. This stuff's looking kind of funny, so maybe I just pop that back down. And then let's do a quick look at this one again, just so you kind of see where I'm going with that whole fur direction kind of idea. So I think we can kind of style it after this. I think actually I would put this scapula further back here. And then we'll kind of kick this forward, minimize that mass as a result. Oh, let's turn on symmetry here. I'm gonna do that real quick again. So a lot of these, the actual joints are going to be zigzagging across. So you can use that zigzag concept to better understand where the rest of this should go. Right now I'm using very large brush. Let's get rid of these. They're looking very distracting. Let's go back here. I'm going to try and figure out the overlap between these forms. Going to try and basically really force the compression of these forms together. Part of it is also to help set it apart from this leg here. Right. So if you have this concept of zigzags, then it does help the rest. Right, so I can use that idea here, and that's going to tell me that this is extending forward too much, and I can kind of put this back into the rest of the body, or we can even build up the fur here. I can even, you don't have to get rid of everything, but you know, just you know, I'll use some of those forms that we created, and then I'll, you know, cross hatch over it, and then as it works towards like another form, I'll start changing the direction of the strokes so that they interact with each other better. Trying to build out some more form, and then we'll go in negative to kind of push all this in. Where's the condyle? Looking for a condyle, and I can work from here. And then kind of, yeah, adding a little bit of more of that underlying bone structure. this is just getting kind of weird and curvy. Kind of straighten that out for a bit. Just because I think it's not quite matching the rest of the model. And then, you know, we can go back and really start getting all the other forms to really meet up, or to really interact, and trying not to create such a hard plane along the rib cage. And then even though I went through that effort of trying to figure out what those muscles were doing, now I think it's time to really go in and do that fur mass pass. And you can start integrating some of the forms so that they don't read too separated, you know. Especially when we're doing the fur pass, we want to start integrating things. I'm going to try to make sure these come together and not create like a giant hole. Trying to think about the general proportions, you know, big to small, thick to thin, that kind of thing. You know, I think typically still, I think you're going to get a little bit more of that shape in the back, and I think I'm kind of going a little overboard on everything here. The whole point of this was the head, not the rest of the body. But let me do a quick adjustment here. I think this mass is too much, so why don't we mask this. Here. I think this is too much of an arc. I mean, it's a cool gestural line, but then I think it's starting to break some of that believability because of how like almost rubbery it feels. And then, you know, we'll do something like this. I'm gonna round out this corner so that it doesn't look like a weird block. And we'll put some of that fur back in. I mean, really, if you look at this reference, that should be pretty, that should descend actually quite a bit. Of course, do a better job than I am right now. And then kind of like get the head to play along with it. I think going back to the head, if I'm interpreting some of these shapes right, instead of having like a generic shape like that, I think it'll come back down on itself here. Yeah, I think that's gonna work better. Kind of smooth that out. maybe consider moving some of these out, or just taking a damn standard at least and carving in where exactly do you intend for this to be. I might even push this forward a little bit more. Maybe I'm going to take this line and redirect it, or that corner, to give this a little bit more structure. In here, just taking a damn standard, pretty big brush, pretty low opacity, and really carving in and figuring out where some of the hair flow, the fur flow is going to be, and then planarizing things that I need to get planar, just so it reads better. And there's I think I'm going to call it here. This is my very long-winded, somewhat late-night rambling video on working out features of the canine head and body and neck and fur. Alright, I hope that helped. Oops.